afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming on this very typical Maine day that these ladies know all too well what this is like out on the water. I'm Linda Hayward. I'm chairman of the Board of Trustees at the Southwest Harbor Public Library, and I very much welcome you here this evening for what I think is going to be a fascinating presentation. And if you haven't read the book yet, they're here. I've read it. It's definitely worth reading. It was fascinating. The author sitting here is Ali Farrel, and she was born in Maine, was forced to leave as a young child, but came back when she could, as we all do. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. She's written this book, she's written other books. If you get her book, you'll find out what else she's written. She's got a children's book that will be out soon, and I expect that will be just as good as the others. And I'm going to let Ali and Genevieve introduce the ladies. I just want to say thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting the library, because we support the community and ladies like this.
Thank you, Linda. And I'd like to thank our hosts tonight, St. John Episcopal Church and the Southwest Harbor Public Library. Without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Ali, who is gracious enough to tell our stories through her book and here tonight.
Thank you guys so much for being here. It means so much. I'm going to try to keep my stuff short because you guys are here to hear about the interesting fishermen over here and not the author. So I'm going to say a little bit about the process, and then I'm going to pass it down the line to the interesting people over there. But this honestly was such a fun project to work on. I'm so grateful that so many of these people let me come into their lives and, you know, dissect every part of their life and let us go out on the boats. And I had some awesome photographers. Oh, I don't need that. I had some awesome photographers that went out on the boat in all kinds of weather conditions, and they were bouncing all over the boat, but they did what they had to do to get the shots, and the fishermen graciously let us be in their way for a whole day, which was probably lovely for them. But the way this all came about really is my father used to fish offshore off of Newfoundland when I was a young kid, and my mother produced and sold lobster tanks. So I always felt kind of a connection to the industry. And then when I moved back here from Massachusetts, all of my friends just happened to be female fishermen, and I would hear all their stories and hilarious stories, and dangerous stories, and I just thought that these are some stories that needed to be out there in the world. And it's just a really interesting lifestyle that they have, which is how the book came about. But it was released right during COVID, which definitely put a kink in things. It took about an additional year to get all of the proper interviews. For those of you who have read the book, Virginia Oliver, she's 101 now and still fishing. People like that, it was kind of worth it to put the book release off until I could properly meet with them and interview them, and, you know, people who are really important to their communities. It was just worth waiting. So, like COVID affected everything, it definitely threw a kink into this book, but we got there finally. And some of the stories that really stood out to me were kids who grow up in fishing families and how different their lifestyle is to any other average kid. A lot of them have stories that are like daddy daycare on the boat. They slept in, you know, a pen on the boat, and you know, as soon as they're old enough to start helping out, they're thrown right into working, and they love it and they're proud of it. And so I loved hearing how similar so many people stories were growing up in a family like that. So I'm going to keep this short and pass it on down. Genevieve.
Thank you, and thank everyone for coming tonight. This is a really great turnout. So I'm Jennifee Mcdonald. I'm a commercial fisherman out of Stonington, Maine. I'm also a member of the Maine legislature, and I'm proud to serve the communities of Southwest Harbor and Tremont, in addition to some of the outer islands in Penobscot Bay. Stonington and Deer Isle, that's where I live, also represent Vinalhaven, North Haven, Swans, Frenchboro, Idaho, and the Cranberry Islands. So, as you can see, I'm certainly a representative of the coasts of Maine and the islands of Maine, which are very commercial fishing-centric communities, very dependent on multi-generational heritage industries, including fishing, but also in the past granite. So I'm proud to be from here. I'm originally from Bar Harbor, and it's great to be on MDI tonight. There are very few things that would get me to brave the traffic of MDI on this opportunity. So thank those of you who also have done so. So I have a 32-foot Holland. I fish out of Stonington. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I fish for a halibut and lobster and pogies and have a recreational scallop license. I don't fish full-time anymore. I also have 3-year-old twins, so they're taking up a lot of my time these days. When I tell people what I do for a living, the question inevitably turns to what it's like to be a woman working on the water. And I tell people that being a woman on the water is a lot of things. It's satisfying and exhilarating, nerve-wracking and rewarding, frustrating and deeply gratifying. I imagine that these are the same feelings felt by every commercial fisherman, regardless of their gender. And I have yet to meet a captain that is less able to run their boat, chart a course, or set a trap due to their gender. So we're working towards equality on the water. It's certainly a male-dominated industry. We can talk a little bit later about the places where it's still lacking. I certainly find that to be the institutions that surround fishing. I had a journalist last week. They released an article, some of you may have read it, it was in the Working Waterfront. It's fantastic, he did a great job. But one of the things he said was that I learned to fish from my husband. On the contrary, he apprenticed under me. So there's still those assumptions that exist within the commercial fishing industry. And hopefully with the help of folks like Ali, we can break down some of those barriers. And I'm going to be your MC tonight. If anybody has any questions, raise your hand and I'll come grab you and give you the microphone.
Yeah, and then you can keep that.
It's you, problem solver.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here and thank you library for inviting us and hosting this wonderful night. My name is Ali Masterson. I've been commercial fishing for almost 18 years now, and I started off when I was 15 working at my family's fish market in Manset. I don't know if anyone remembers that little fan days, but yeah. I was the person who would put orders together and go and deliver that around town and around the islands into the different restaurants around. So that's sort of where I got involved. And then when I was a little bit older, I was asked to help my captain pick up a load of traps and just kind of help finish out the season for him because his crew had thrown us back out. And I've been at it ever since. We go lobstering. We used to go year round. We're only going now May through December. We go scalloping, which I'm sure a lot of my scallop customers are here. I go scalloping from December through March, April. And then the rest of the year we're doing all the gear work, getting everything ready for all those fisheries. We've been ground fishing, shrimping. I bring my daughter who's over on the playground. She doesn't want to be seen, but she does come out with us often. And we're trying to get her a little more into it. Right now she's a little put off by the bait, so that never bothered her until this year. But I enjoy working. I think that, you know, being on the boat takes a lot of perseverance. It takes endurance, it takes thick skin. It takes a lot of guts to kind of just keep doing it year after year. I'm with a great panel of women here. I've known a lot of them for a long time. Lindsay, at the other end, was actually one of the first lobster women I knew, and she was known as Lobster Lindsay. So that was 20 years ago, I think I met her, and she was one of the first. And then Abby here, her mom, was one of the first ladies that I fished next to, so it's really great for me to be with these ladies right now. So thanks for having us. And questions, we'd love to have questions. I know we're going to go down the line, but if anyone has anything they want to talk about or ask, we're certainly welcome to answer anything.
Hi, so I'm Ariel Gilly, captain of Queen Bee here in Southwest Harbor. I also grew up in the fishing industry, mainly lobstering. My father taught basically all of us kids. The only one that didn't really take it was my little sister. She liked to stay home on land. She likes land. But besides that, I started when I was, I started in a car seat. Me and my brothers didn't get along very well, so my mom would just ship me on the boat with my dad. So I love the saying in the book that I had said my baby swing was based on the weather because I was strapped to the ceiling. So when I was 11, I got my student license, and then when I was 15, going on 16, I got my commercial, and you can get like 300 traps, and then it progresses from there every year. And when I was 15, I got the Mermaids, my first boat. It was a 28-foot T. Jason, just a little thing, but I grew that really fast. But now I'm in a 42-foot Novi, the Queen Bee, and I've been in it for like almost 5 years. I'm definitely ready for an upgrade. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess I grew up in it, so it's in my blood. I tried to quit once, but I couldn't do it. Springtime came and you get the itch. You got to go back. You got to be on the water. But yeah, so that's kind of the basics. But there's a lot more in the book. But I'm going to hand it over to Abby here.
I'm Abby Pettyville. I also fish here out of Southwest Harbor. I captain the Captain Gus. I also was born into it. I started going with my dad when I was 5, and I got my student license when I was 8. Went through the student program, got my license at 16 as well, and bought my boat my senior year of high school. It's a 25-foot Northern Edge. And so I fish up and tight, so I don't have a very long season. So when I'm not fishing my own boat, I fish with my father, and he fishes about April through December. But he just built a new boat, big boat, offshore boat. So I think we're gonna start fishing year round. And just had a baby last year, so I took the year off last year and back into it this year. Very happy to be. And I'm starting with my dad just to get my feet wet again. And it was good to be back on the water. I don't know what else to say.
Hey there, I'm Heather Thompson. I captain fishing vessel Gold Digger out of Harrington. I started when I was 10 years old, so that gives me 36 years on the water. I started with my dad. He needed a stern man. He's evidently couldn't take it, so at 10 years old, he said, you're up. So that's what I've been doing ever since. I have been captain for the past 19 years. I've had 4 boats. Currently, Gold Digger is a 36-foot Wayne. It's the 100th Wayne Beal built. I race it in the
She's really fast.
It's so much fun. So that's an addiction. You think? It's an expensive addiction, but that's what I do I go to work to race on the weekends, basically right now. But I have 2 boys, 25 and a 20-year-old that grew up on the water as well. My ex-husband and I, we took turns with them. We fished around each other, so after all the food was gone on one boat, they'd want to jump onto the other boat, so we'd do a lot of running around. And I fish 800 traps. I fish from usually May, June to late November. And then I've dragged for scallops and urchins, and I've done all that. And I also am a full-time sub at the Narragansett High School, and I coach varsity basketball at the high school girls basketball. So yeah, I'm not quite as good of a speaker as Genevieve and some of these other ladies, but I would be happy to answer any questions. Lobstering has given me so many opportunities to meet so many people, and it's not just rewarding the fact that we're doing what traditionally is considered a man's job, but just the opportunities to see other women and young girls that are coming up through and letting them know if there is something that they want to do, there is not one person stopping them but themselves. So just keep pushing, and if it's something you want to do, just go for it. Just try.
Hi there, I'm Lee Farnsworth. I fish out of Korea Harbor. I fish a 29-foot H&H. That is not a race boat. But I love my boat. I've been fishing for 17 years with my own license, and I went sternman for 8 years before that. I did the apprentice program to get my license. And I'm originally from Connecticut, so I'm not born into it by any means. I came up here just kind of on a whim with a friend and got a job on one of the whale watch boats and the nature cruise boats, and I could not stand working with all the people. I'm not the biggest people person. But I would look out into the harbor and see all the fishermen in their own boats, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I made it a goal, and it took some time, but I got there. I have 2 sons, a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they both have their licenses, and I take them out to all their traps in my boat, and soon they'll have their own. They've saved enough money to buy their own boat. I don't know, I can't imagine doing anything else. And I've done a lot of different things, so I have a lot to compare to. This is the absolute pinnacle of what I could possibly be doing. I can't describe what it feels like to be out there working for myself, providing a livelihood for my family, and loving what I do, going to work every day and loving your job. When you hear around you all the time people complaining that they have to go to work, they can't wait till they can retire, or switching jobs, and I feel privileged to be able to do this job. And it is a challenge as a woman, as a mother, because you have all of those responsibilities that go along with being a mom, which I also love. I wouldn't trade that for anything, but it makes the job twice as hard, because everything that has to be done if you're not a fisherman still has to be done, even though you're a fisherman. So you get home, and I was just saying to Heather, when I'm on the boat and I'm going to haul, and I think to myself, what are we having for supper tonight? And I'm writing on the bulkhead in pencil my grocery list. Oh, there's the next buoy, got to stop. And all day long I had to add to my list. So there's a lot to it, but there's just nothing better.
Hi everyone, my name is Cardozo. I'm a steerman out of Bar Harbor. I actually grew up very far away, so I think I beat you on this one. I'm originally from Italy, so I came over here from across the Atlantic as a master's student at College of the Atlantic, and my thesis was looking at the lobster fishery. And I always tell people that I really wanted to go fishing, and the thesis was sort of an excuse, even though I had to make it look like it was the other way around. I convinced my supervisor that I really needed to get on a boat to do my thesis, and I convinced him somehow. So I found a captain in Bar Harbor that agreed to take me for the end of a season and then hire me as full-time crew for the next one. And I always worked on the water before coming here, but never as a commercial fisherman. But the second I got on that boat, I knew that it's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It just felt right. Everything about it felt like what I wanted to do and to be. So I feel really grateful every day that he gave me that opportunity as a complete greenhorn from, as I said, very far away. And since then, I've been really lucky to expand my knowledge of fishing. I lobster primarily, but I also go scalloping in the winter, and we go halibut fishing in the spring. So it's really great to be able to see all the different aspects of fishing. Everyone thinks of lobstering when they think of Maine fishing, but it's not just lobstering. And I don't think I can add much to what the other ladies have already said. I know I bring a bit of a different perspective because I wasn't lucky enough to grow up in a fishing family. My father's deadly scared of the ocean, of the water, so definitely did not grow up at that kind of deadly daycare. But I always feel blessed to, having been able to meet people like you and learn from you and finally be able to embrace this sort of lifestyle. So, over to you.
I'm Lindsay Mcdaniels. I've been fishing for about 20 years. I grew up in Minnesota, so I was from away as well, and I went to COA. And I actually dropped out because I started lobstering, but I stuck with it, and I got my own lobster license because I started out as crew and did the apprenticeship, and then had to work my way up to get past the waiting list. And it's been awesome. I have a 27 H&H. And I take these 3 lovely ladies to go fishing with me. So sometimes it's a lot of work. They like to mess around and get all muddy and throw mud at each other. And I'm like, wait, we need to focus here. But Lanaya is my daughter, and then we have our 2 friends, Lily and Helena. And we all lobster out of Northeast Harbor. So it's been, it's been awesome. I love being on the water as well. And not growing up here, it's nice to get accepted by a lot of the fishermen. And I pretty much fished out of every harbor. Started in Bar Harbor, or Seal Harbor, Bar Harbor, Southwest Harbor. Never fished out of Bass Harbor, but now I'm in Northeast, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And it's nice to have the girls be able to grow up and learn about the fishing industry, and hopefully teach them some lifelong skills. And if they want to do it one day, they can, because they all have their student licenses. When they were 8, they all got their license, and now that they're 11, they can fish more traps, but we're not quite there yet. I'm still not quite there. I can fish 800, but I don't have 800 in the water. It's too much being a mom and trying to juggle sports and summer camps and everything else, but it's a great profession, and I hope we can all inspire other women to get into the industry. Want to say anything? No? Okay.
All right, so that wraps up our panel, and I know you folks must have some questions tonight, so don't be shy. Here we go.
What is the stern?
Oh, hold on, let me give you the microphone.
So what does the sternman do? What is that job? Whatever the captain tells him.
Who wants to field that?
Well, you pretty much are baiting, baiting the bait bags, measuring the lobsters, banding the lobsters, cleaning the boat. Yeah, you're.
I'm the sternman here.
I did it all today. I was alone, so I had both jobs, but
Well, what I do is bait all the bags, change out the bait bags, the captain starts picking the lobsters out of the trap. If he's not done by the time I've changed the bait bag, I take the trap over and finish for him. And then I measure and band the lobsters. I have to sort of manage bait, make sure that we have enough bait for the day. And then whenever we're shifting traps, so if we're moving traps from one spot to the other, I stack them. Usually the captain on my boat. Right? So it's usually different. Every boat is different, but the way we do it, the captain takes care of the ropes, so he calls them up if they need to be called up. And then I move the traps, I stack them. And when we're taking up or setting gear, I'm also moving the traps around from the stern to the boat to the rail, or vice versa.
As a captain, I'll add the things that you don't do as a sternman is ask when we're going in, how many traps we have left, or if we're going tomorrow.
Oh, and there's also the scrubbing of the boat at the end, which is honestly the hardest job, and you can never do it right.
Question about scalloping. It used to be you could only scallop the days that some government organisation said, and you never knew what days. Doesn't that make life very difficult? I mean, do they still do that?
So last year we could go Monday through Thursday, and it actually I feel like it works the opposite. It makes it so it's actually very predictable, because if the weather's crappy and bad, we're still going. But then we have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off usually. So that's always up in, they're always talking about changing things, but for now, the way it's been for the last few years is we've been able to go Monday through Friday. And then there's usually a closed area day that will be open on usually a Monday. And those are kind of special areas that we're only allowed to go. And then we're only allowed to go from sunrise, so we need to be at the spot where we're going to be, setting out for the first time at sunrise. So we need to make sure that we're in position. Usually there could be 60 boats in one area. Sometimes there's only a handful, but there could be a lot of boats. So we kind of need to claim our spot and be there for sunrise. And then the minute that it goes by Augusta sunrise time, we're right there ready to deploy our drag and ready to go, right when that tick of the clock. So it can be pretty intense, but and then we can fish through, I think, till sunset. Usually we don't make it that long in the day. We usually have our limit before then. So
Is that what to prevent overfishing?
it's regulated, so we're in a 3-zone rotation through the entire state. So each zone is fished for 1 season and then closed for 2 more seasons, and then opens again on the 3rd. So, and that's the entire coast is like that.
I'll get to you folks in the back, I promise. I'm gonna work my way by quadrant.
Hi, I wanted to talk to Julia actually, because I'm actually a student right now. I'm studying lobster fishing for an undergraduate anthropology degree, and I was kind of curious what your focus was when you were studying, what subject it was for.
Sure, we can also talk about it later. But I was looking primarily at 2 things. The first one was the state of the working waterfronts here on the island, with a particular focus on Bar Harbor. As most of you probably know, the town period in Bar Harbor is kind of busy and crowded. There's a bit of a potential conflict with the cruise ship industry, so I was looking at that.
You're very polite.
I'm trying to be. I've been told before that I wasn't, so I'm trying to learn from my past lessons. And then the other thing that I was looking at was the changing nature of informal territories in Frenchman Bay. So one aspect of the lobster fishery that is usually well known is how territorial it is and how each arbor has its own fishing area that is not officially designated, but it's usually very much respected nonetheless. And from my initial conversations with fishermen in Bar Harbor, I caught wind that things were changing. So I really wanted to look into that, and I did a study of how and why these territories have been changing in the last 2 decades from a fisherman's perspective. So if you're more interested, we can chat later for sure.
Who else? Don't be shy. Wait, here we go. Way back here. You might never get us all together in the same place again, so take advantage of this opportunity.
I'm curious how you find a captain that'll take our daughters, because my granddaughter, when she was 10, was interested, and I didn't know how to find anybody to sponsor her. So, and now she's 14, so I'm not sure she's that interested anymore. But how do you find people to sponsor them?
I mean, I've sponsored other girls. I think you can sponsor as many as you. You can only sponsor 2?
No, that's how many I sponsor.
Oh, I know, but I thought you can sponsor more than 2, I think. Because I sponsor these 3, and then I was sponsoring some other neighborhood girls, but they've never told me I'm sponsoring too many people, so I don't know. I guess if you know any local fishermen or women, I mean, or men, you could ask a man, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, I definitely did a couple of the neighborhood girls, and then I have these 3, and I mean, I guess it's just maybe find a fisherman that is a friend or a friend of a friend, and just talk to them and.
Oh, sorry. I took the mic away from you because I was going to help answer the question.
I said most of them are oldest that I know, so they're not interested.
Right.
So,
I think they can still sponsor. I don't even think you have to.
You don't have to go on the boat or do any of that.
Yeah.
You just have to
Have this stuff
sign
inside.
the paper.
You just have to sign the paper when they bring it to you. It's up to them to keep track of their hours that they do gear work or fishing hours and things like that, and then they'll bring it to you And you go down through and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to, and then a warden will sign that, and then you just send it off to the
But
state.
they'll have to be on somebody's boat to do all that.
They need, oh yes, they need to do the work, yes.
Yeah, so you
Or
have
get
to
their
find
own.
somebody that'll take them.
If it's a student license, they can get their own, yeah.
Right.
The legislator in me is burning to answer this question. As you all debate the legalities of the
Okay,
sponsorship
I just,
Yeah, no,
I
we
want to
can-
add my
no,
2
Mayor.
cents in there. As far as the law goes, though, when you sponsor somebody else, you're accepting responsibility for that student. So for somebody to just go and say, oh yes, I'll apprentice you, you're taking responsibility for that other person legally as well. So that's why when you sponsor someone, you're supposed to, there's technically, I mean, yeah, they can go do it off on their own and figure it out, but at the same rate, you're supposed to be teaching them, and they're supposed to be learning from you. That's why you have the responsibility of them, is because they're learning from you. So that's what I know of that, because that's how I ended up learning.
So I have the pleasure of serving on the Marine Resources Committee, and so we set the scallop season. Well, we create the guidelines that give DMR the authority to set the scallop season. And we handle things like the apprentice program and what changes should be made and how students are sponsored and how adults are sponsored, and it is a perennial topic that comes up every year. So in the sponsored student program, you can sponsor as many people as you want, both as apprentices and as students. So at the age, she said 14 now. So I'm guessing that you'd like her to gain some experience before she sets out on a boat with some traps. So certainly the fishery operates by word of mouth. One of the students that I sponsored, you have to have had your license for 5 years before you can sponsor somebody, and he hadn't, so I ended up sponsoring his son. Your best bet is really just to get to know your local lobster dealer, your local lobsterman. Talk to people at the grocery store. Go into a bar. I'm not going to say that we drink, but maybe some of us do. So get to know the lobster industry. There is a real hesitancy because of safety concerns to take people that young that aren't a family member. We do have child labor laws, and although we do allow, family members and our children and some students onto the boat, there is a real caution there. You certainly don't want to put somebody else's kids at risk. I have taken other people's kids with me before, and you're just a little extra careful. But the way the student program works is that once they have some experience and have gone out on the boat a bit, they go out on their own. They set their own traps, they run their own boat, you oversee them, make sure that they're doing the work as they should, and then you sign off on them. So they're not on your boat anymore. And that's the way that we operate the student program. It does favor kids from fishing families in some way because they have those opportunities. But certainly, I think probably most of us have taken kids that aren't ours and sponsored kids that aren't ours. So find a woman who's a little more likely to show a little kindness towards a kid, and you'll probably find someone. All right, who else has a question?
Could you please explain about the waiting list? I saw many references into the book about, well, I was on the waiting list and I had to wait. So what's that about?
This comes over to me. I think with all of us here, I've probably waited the longest on the list. I waited 13 years to get my license. In looking back, I have my license now, so I'm happy to have that. It's a nice little thing to have in my back pocket. I'm still fishing with my captain, and I plan to do that for the next season, maybe 2, if he's lucky. The wait list, we go through a program, which I have to think back now because it feels like it was decades ago. We have to do 200 days, right, Genevieve? I'm looking at you now. Yeah, in 1,000 hours. We have to do a Coast Guard safety course. What else do I do?
2 years.
2 years, right, 2 years on the boat. I completed my entire program in less than a year because I had the hours, the days at sea. We were fishing almost every day during those years that I was doing it, so I racked up my hours and my days very quickly. Then I got placed on a list. At the time, it was a 3-to-1 exit ratio, so for every 3 people who did not renew their license or passed away, 1 new license would come off that list. So that took a while. There was a few years where the zone council, the state is broken up into zone councils, and this where we are on MDI is zone B. So the zone B council voted to make that 5-to-1 ratio for a few years. And we didn't lose any licenses for those couple of years, so there was essentially no movement on the list. So I sat there for a little longer than needed. Things changed in the last, I'd say, 5 years. It got a little easier to come off the list. I got my license last April, so it's nice to have that. But it was a very long process. In the meantime, I got my real estate license. I'm an associate broker now. I have rental properties that I manage. I mean, I made the best use of my time while still fishing. So it worked out in my favor, but I know there's a lot of people that are still kind of stuck there.
So why? So that implies that there's a limit on the number of licenses that are given out. Is that to control the amount of fishing?
Is there yes and no. I believe they talked about a limit for each zone, but I don't know if that ever got applied.
So there's actually no set number. It's not like 2006. It's totally based on entry-exit ratios. And there are as many opinions about this topic as there are people in the state of Maine, it seems. It again comes up in the legislature every year. We have a carryover bill. I'm of the Zone C, which is where I live in Stonington. We were an open zone for years and years and years. We only closed, I think, 5 years ago, and we have a 1-to-1 exit-entry ratio. So we're maintaining our current number of fishermen. So each zone does it differently. Personally, as a legislator, I would like to see this so that it could never at least be more than 3-to-1, because I think that's very fair. 5-to-1 is just, I think it's too restrictive personally. We also implemented tags in, tags out. So, fishermen can have 800 tags, that's our legal limit. I only have 400 by choice. Some other people may have 600, or you may see people that are retiring with 800 tags, but those haven't been active, or have a latent license that they've only bought 200 tags for 12 years. So we talked about how to weigh what truly is fishing effort. Is it licenses? Is it tags? So the zones now have the option to do tags in, tags out, which is a little bit more permissive for entry. So personally, I think that latent effort and blocking people out of the fishery, those things don't support our coastal economy. So they don't contribute to our economy to be locking people out of the industry. We have a very robust resource, so we can support some fishing effort. There are some other issues that the industry is facing right now, which is why this bill has been stagnated as we talk about vertical lines, but I'm hopeful moving forward that we will see zones become a little bit more permissive about letting in folks like Holly. Who else has a question?
How does the industry designate where each fisherman goes with their traps, so that they're not on top of each other? Is there a system?
Trial by fire. No.
I was going to say, I go where I want to go.
I just show up like a swarm of bees. No, but you kind of, it all depends on the tide and the depth of the water, and so if the tide's coming in and it's running in and you have your buoy and then your rope that's connected to your trap, if the tide's coming in, it's going to push your buoy that way, so you got to plan where your trap, where you're going to push it over, where it's going to land. It's kind of like a strategic, it's a process. It's a very in-depth learning process, essentially. But there's not a set, you can go here and you can go there. You generally...
No territory.
Well, there's zones, there's some people get territorial, you can't come over here because it's our area, but that's usually I don't know, there's some islands and places that they're like that. But everything is, there is a line, zone A, zone B, zone C, where you can fish. You have to fish, if you live in between zones, you have to fish at least 51% of your traps in your declared zone. I think it goes based on what town you live in, what you're registered to, what your license says, what your zone. But besides that, it's as far as in the water traps and buoys when you're fishing and hauling and stuff. You kind of go, you set in your traps in a line, you set one, you set one, you set one. And you just kind of haul, and you just work your way around other buoys and around other people as best you can. There are snarls. It gets wrapped up sometimes. Sometimes the tide goes. Sometimes you can't see them. Things happen. But Yeah, I guess that's the best way I could answer that. I would like to introduce someone real quick. She's over here wiggling. This is my daughter, my up-and-comer. Okay, what's her name?
My name's Cheyenne.
Cheyenne what? What are you going to do when you grow up?
I'm gonna be a teacher and a fisherman.
How?
I'm going to do one on fall and one on winter and one on summer.
So you're going to lobster in the summer and you're going to teach in the fall and winter? Oh, okay. What do you do on the boat right now every day when you go with me because you can't go to camp anymore?
I fish with my mama.
What do you do though?
I fan lobsters.
You fan lobbies? Okay. And you also put them in the tank, right? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? No. Okay. All right. She's done. Sorry.
As women fishermen, have you felt mostly supported or resisted by your male colleagues? I mean, one of you said that it's traditionally...
I feel supported. I feel very supported. I work with the same guy that I've been with for 18 years, and his son has moved up into the fisheries, only 17. He helps us. I feel like after many years of doing it, I've got just as much respect on the water as most of the men that I see around. There's some guys that they come and go, but I'm still here, and consistency has certainly paid off for me. So I don't feel threatened.
That's the key, consistency.
Consistency and endurance and thick skin. It all of the above.
Okay, thank you.
But I think these ladies probably have something to say.
I've been asked that before, and I would agree. I started when I was 10, and in the harbor that we have our boats, there was 4 boats. Now there's over 35. So I've been there longer than most of these guys that have come in, and I've never been treated any different. It's actually a challenge to surprise them, because when you're coming down, they're like, they think you're a girl, you know. But you push them out of the way and you do what you have to do and you prove them wrong. So you're earning your spot just like any other person. Our lobsters are the same price as a man's, does not matter. So you just do what you have to do, and I've always been respected that way. They just might look at you a little bit differently.
Heather brings up a really good point that I like to bring up often, which is that there is parity in the lobster industry because lobsters are worth the same price on the dock, regardless of the gender of the captain.
Does anyone want to talk about mice for more? No. I mean, I will. Ask a question. Maybe I'll answer.
I just want to know how you all feel about what is being proposed for the lobster industry in the future, as far as the chapter is concerned.
I'll take a stab at it. You can take a stab.
So I'm happy to address this issue. Like I mentioned, I'm in the legislature. I'm also a Democrat. I'm an ardent environmentalist. So people are often surprised that I'm also a commercial fisherman. And I find it very easy to be an environmentalist and a commercial fisherman. We've had fishermen-initiated conservation measures in place since 1874. Many of us are stewards of the sea and of our industry. I just passed legislation to ban the intentional releases of balloons because that's one of the #1 pieces of plastic and trash that we see out in the bay. I certainly care very deeply, as do all fishermen I know, about the marine ecosystem. I also care a lot about right whales, and I care a lot about humpback whales and minkies and sea turtles. I have a special fondness for our seabirds. I'm certainly sympathetic to the plight of the right whale, North Atlantic right whale, an endangered species. I strongly believe that due to the shift of the North Atlantic right whale's primary planktonic food source, which is a copiopod, it has brought North Atlantic right whales further into deeper, colder, more eastern waters, further offshore. We have talked about I'm sure many of you have seen in the news the mortality events happening up in Canada. So I certainly don't want to push this off and say, well, it's Canada, or it's cruise ships, but there is science behind it. Places in Canada that have never seen right whales before are now seeing them, primarily the snow crab fishery. So we are seeing more entanglements. As a commercial fisherman in Maine, with plenty of days on the water and talking to other fishermen, I've never seen a North Atlantic right whale. I understand that they don't get in a plane and fly from Georgia up to Canada, but I do think they have moved much further offshore beyond where the Maine lobster fishery operates. So our boats that go the furthest out are approximately 40 miles. And the vast majority of the lobster industry, although we do have a large offshore fleet in down East Maine, operates within 3 miles of shore. So I think that the current federal proposition through both the courts and NOAA is putting an undue amount of risk, pointing an undue amount of risk to the Maine lobster fishery. So that's a lot of words to say that I don't believe that we're the problem. I believe that there is a problem and that we need collaborative international science and better data and better resources and aerial surveys and tracking to truly address this issue. Simply removing vertical lines out of the Gulf of Maine isn't going to save the right whale, but it is going to be devastating to the Maine lobster fishery. Anybody else?
So I'm aware that over the last number of decades, many of the formerly plentiful fisheries have collapsed, and yet the lobster fishery seems to be doing pretty well. But now there's this threat of warming waters, and it sounds like problems are moving north. So people like you that actually know the waters, would you care to comment on that?
All right, who are the 2 COA students in the room? Come on.
I'm not sure why well, I'm the one with the least amount of time on the water, so I feel like everyone else is actually more qualified, but as the COA student, I would go for it. I think climate change is a concern for most livelihoods that depend on a natural environment or a natural resource. And there has been, to my knowledge, some evidence that lobsters could be affected. Personally, what I would like to see more is a focus on increasing the resilience of fishermen in Maine. Right now, the fisheries are heavily dependent on lobsters, and that's not a safe way to operate, regardless of what the potential threat is, whether that's climate change or, right whales or cruise ships, since they've come up a few times. It's never a safe way to operate, to put all your eggs in one basket, and that's pretty much common sense. So what I would personally like to see from the DMR, from the state, from the federal government is support for fishermen to be able to diversify and be prepared for potential changes that are brought on by climate change, and whether that's investing in new infrastructure and working waterfronts so that new advancing fisheries could be accessed at a later date when they become more important, or whether that's putting more research into lobstering and figuring out what the effects of climate change will be. Those are both options, but I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I don't have the time on the water to tell you if I've observed any changes. That's a question for most of these women here, but not me. But in terms of potential solutions or potential steps forward, I think that's what we should focus on. Yes, lobstering is huge and lobstering is important, and it's a fundamental part of the Maine identity, but we shouldn't assume that it's going to be here forever in the way that it is now. So we should instead put some effort into increasing the resilience and the flexibility of fishermen so that we can remain fishermen as long as we want.
As far as the climate change, from what I can see as like studying the water and knowing when to put your traps in the beginning of summer and everything, not really the global warming part of it, but I mean, as far as the water temperature change, that's something for, like, as a fisherman, you keep an eye on. Because when lobsters shed faster in warmer water, so what you were catching last year at one date could be completely different than it's going to be this year just because of the water temperature. Like, it doesn't mean that next year you're going to do just as good this week. Because, like, for example, I don't know, what was the water temperature? It was like 2 weeks difference this year and last year, the water temperature for like the week of July 4th, which, I don't know, you kind of judge what you're going to do based on the time of year and the month. But this year, I noticed it was 2 weeks ahead of time. So I tried to jump ahead of time by 2 weeks, and it ended up paying off this year. But you got to study stuff. But as far as global warming, like, it does affect lobsters because the warmer the water, the quicker they shed, and the more often they shed. So I do notice that too. So I don't know if that helps with the question.
I mean, I'll add that shrimp is probably our best example. It's been in the news lately. There was a BDN article about it last week. So we were always at the far southern range of the habitat for northern pink shrimp. So as Gulf of Maine waters warmed, that stock wasn't overfished. That resource shifted into colder, deeper waters in Canada. So while climate change is certainly, the crisis of my generation and clearly a concern when we talk about building resiliency in the fishing industry and building resiliency in the Gulf of Maine, something to keep in mind is that as some species shift north, other species from the mid-Atlantic will shift into the Gulf of Maine. So we are seeing a little bit of that with the black sea bass and perhaps blue crab. Squid is something that I've explored as an experimental fishery. So one of the things that DMR and NOAA can do is invest in permits and quota from the Mid-Atlantic Council. So as they address their latent fisheries and they retire permits, DMR, Department of Marine Resources, needs to have a seat at the table to request that quota allowance be transferred to the New England Council. And that's a way that hopefully we will build resiliency and be able to diversify our fishing and continue to fish, not just through my lifetime, but through our children's lifetime. All right, who's next? You guys are great. I love all the questions. Over here.
Since most of you were all captains, I'm just wondering, are you all mechanics as well? It sounds like you all have great new boats like Jennifee, somethings or others, and that's wonderful. And you were the racer for sure, top line. But do you have to fix your own boats?
I'm gonna field this one. So when I started fishing on the island, my island, the other islands, they're both my islands, I guess, these days. Somebody told me that I needed to either become a really good mechanic or I needed to create a great relationship with Billings. So I married one of their mechanics. That's how I have dealt with this problem.
My dad always told me that if you can't fix a boat, you don't deserve to run a boat. So, I can basically fix most anything unless something blows apart. Then, yeah, you gotta get to it.
And you call Dad.
Yeah, then we call Dad or whoever else is out. Yeah, that's close.
Somebody else take a stab at it.
I know the basics. That's it. I know how to dial a phone. I always said I can run a boat. If something breaks, I want somebody that knows way more than I do fixing it, because it costs a lot of money if you screw something up, and I'm not qualified. So
she has a fancy race motor. She's qualified to run that.
I know how to push the throttle.
When I had a gas engine in my boat, I could fix that all day long. That was easy to work on. Parts were easy to come by. They weren't that expensive. I put more starters on a 350 Chevy than I care to admit. And it's not easy to reach, let me tell you. But with a diesel engine, it's so expensive. If you mess something up, you could ruin your season. I mean, it's computerized. Yeah, there's just, if you don't have the true knowledge of like a working knowledge of how that engine runs, then you could really mess things up. I mean, I change the oil, I change the the Raycor filter, and I can do some electrical work. If I need new electronics, I can do some of that. You know, wiring up pumps and things like that. I can do that kind of stuff, but the actual engine itself, if it needs a new water pump or something like that, then I get a mechanic. I get my husband to look at it, and when he can't do it, then we get a friend. When he can't do it, then we call Tompkins.
My husband's family does own Billings Diesel. I will say it, the new engines are like new cars. A lot of them are computerized. They're designed to be worked on by the dealership. Particularly if you're fortunate to have a newer motor, there's a warranty. So, similar to your brand new, whatever it is that you may drive, you're probably not going to attempt a lot of them, or can't really, unless you have the $10,000 computer system.
Yeah, that's how they make their money.
Yes, that is. Thank you. No. All right, who else?
I just have a quick question. Are you ever called lobster women, fisher women? And if so, how do you feel about that?
We're called a lot of things. Some I can repeat and some I can't. But yeah, I mean, I don't care what I'm referred to as. Really, it doesn't bother me. Some people would prefer one name over another, but I mean, I think that's just everybody's preference.
Stick with Captain, and you'll be fine. Except for Julia, sorry.
It's fine, one day. I hate when people call me stern lady. I just think it sounds, first of all, it doesn't sound like what it's supposed to mean. It just sounds like I'm a stern lady. And I just don't see the point of making the differentiation. English is obviously not my first language, so maybe I'm missing a few, I don't know. But to me, a fisherman is just a person that works on the water, and to make the distinction, it's just I feel like it's a way of pointing out that I'm somewhat different, and I'm not, and I'm trying everything I can to show them that I'm not. And honestly, most people that say fisherwoman or sternwoman, or that don't really know what to call me, are not part of the fishing community. Like, they're not fishermen.
All right, who else?
I have a very mundane question. I'd just like to know what a typical day looks like. Like tomorrow, what time do you have to get up, and what are you going to do?
Well, that's not mundane at all. It changes, I think, for each of us.
Well, I have an 18-month-old, and so I'm up most of the night. Get up 4:30, and then you do your bait, you can plan your day out, look at the weather. Some days the weather's just crap, and you decide, well, maybe tomorrow will be a better day, maybe we'll go tomorrow. But yeah, so you get your bait ready, and my family, we do all our own bait. We don't get our bait at the dock, so we have to go get our bait, whether that be in the afternoon when we get in, we buy it from a bait dealer versus at the dock. And so we have a cooler system, and we get all our bait, get in the truck, then we have to go to the boat, get the boat to the dock, put the bait and everything on the dock. Then we go. Us in Southwest Harbor, our fishing grounds aren't really close, so you may steam anywhere 15 to 45 minutes, depending on where you're hauling that day. And then you haul as many as you can haul all day, weather permitting, boat permitting. Then you come in, you sell your lobsters. Most people sell every day, and it just depends where you're selling. If you sell to a truck or a dock or whatever, or like this week, I know everybody here can attest to this. There's been a price game, we've all been like, should we sell our lobsters today? Should we hold them? Is the price going to go up? Is the price going to go down? So, and then, yeah, you sell your lobsters, and if you're going to go the next day, it's easier a lot of times to put your bait on in the afternoon, but again, everybody's different. It's, yeah. I know me, I get off the boat, I go to the food mart, I buy groceries, I come home, I chase my kid around until I force her to go to bed, and then get up and do it again.
Does she go fishing with you?
Not yet, she's only 18 months, so waiting a little bit.
It's hard when you have young kids too.
It is, I'm very lucky, and my mom watches her, babysits her, so I don't have to worry about having a babysitter, you know, or if the babysitter's sick, but a lot of people do. I'm very fortunate in that aspect.
Still waiting for somebody to show me how to balance my work and my family. Anybody has any tips? I'm certainly accepting advice. All right, who else? I'm not ready to go home to my kids yet, so you guys have to keep asking questions.
I know that lobstering is a very physical industry, and it's a raft with risk, and it's hard on your body. What do you do to protect yourself from injury and take care of yourself?
It is very physical. I think that all of us here, I mean, we're not bodybuilders by any means, but we certainly, I think it goes back to what I said earlier about endurance. I certainly have had some, I mean, I think we've all probably thrown our backs out, tweaked ourselves in just the right way where we've been out of business for a few days or a week. I had a cortisone shot this afternoon, so I mean, I think we're all sort of running the game of probably wear and tear on our bodies is going to show itself at some point in our lives, but I think that I enjoy the hard work because without this, I don't know where I would be. I mean, I like being physical on the boat. It helps me stay physical when I get off the boat. It's obviously very exhausting for the most part, but I think for me personally, I enjoy the hard work and I enjoy actually being physical. It's like a workout that I don't have to pay for. I get paid to do it. So that works. That works for me.
What happened to me, I always wear a knife. All I did was I pulled it out of my sheath and there we go. Yep, just did that. Hang on, I'll be right back. Duct tape up forward, wrapped it back together. But things happen. I mean, as a woman, I think probably every one of us girls here can say that you overwork yourself just to prove yourself because you kind of feel like you have to. I mean, everybody expects you to fail at first, and then when you kind of show them what's up, they don't know what to think, I guess. But I don't know, it's exciting, and I don't know, the effort, you're proud of yourself at the end of the day, I think, when you come in, or you see that big check at the end of the week or whatever, but yeah, it's a rugged game, I know that.
Yeah, there's almost not a day goes by where you're not saying ow or you hurt something somewhere along. Like just a week ago, a toggle came out of my hauler and came back and took me under the chin and snapped my jaw, bit my tongue, and I thought I lost my front teeth. So automatic tears to the eyes, and then you get mad. And I've been hung by ropes. I've lost my boots overboard and have to go back and haul a trap to get my boot back. I've watched my dad hang on to the back of the stern while the boat is going, and he's holding on, and I'm running back to help him, and he's like, no, go stop the boat. You know, because when you're a kid, you panic. So, I mean, I've had things explode on the boat. We use a chemical called Shock-It to bleach our ropes and things in. And my sister, who was my stern man, there was a little bit of that Shock-It in a bucket with a little bit of water, and it exploded in her face. She could not see. I had to hook the boat up, take her into the hospital, and get everything flushed out. But there isn't a day that goes by that something hasn't happened to, it may not have to be major injury, but something happens. And you always have to pay attention. And you could be paying attention all the time. It doesn't matter. Things happen. It's an unexpected. And like she was saying, you know, you just have to buck up. It's part of the job. Straight ahead and go on to the next day. I know as far as for me, I had kids and I started 2 weeks after. I had my oldest son, started 2 weeks after. Doctors do not recommend that because there is a lot of pulling and it ruins your body on the inside. Knee surgeries, arm surgeries. It's never ending, but the reward that you get from doing what you're doing, being your own boss, being able to go to your kids' functions because you have the right to go in early so you can watch your kid participate in a sport, it's totally worth getting punched in the face for me, anyway. So.
I don't really have that many stories. Lately, what's been happening to me, and I don't know what I'm doing different this year, but it must be the way I'm turning the trap on the rail, but every time I turn around, that trap lands on my calf. It falls off that rail, lands on my calf, and I swear, I'm angrier each time it happens. But I go pretty slow. I'm super conscious. I want to make it home every day, so I go slow. I don't rip and tear. I don't fly through the gear, and you know, I don't get as much. I don't get as much haul, you know, throughout the day, so I don't make as much money. But I have that one speed that I'm set at, and that's how I do my job. And that's how I've always been since I started, and that's, I guess, how I'll always be. And people say to me, well, take a Sturman with you and you'll be faster, but I don't think I would be that much faster.
I think I would take a Sturman for years. We've had this conversation dozens of times.
I have at times. Twice I've taken Sturman. I love having a Sturman with me, but like this year I'm fishing 460 traps. I have a 12-year-old, I have an 8-year-old. I have 800 tags. I can fish 800 traps. I can, you know, buy another.
That was Sturman now. You were just waiting for your kids to grow up.
I don't want to torture them yet. But so I can't, fishing 460 traps, I'm not going to get someone to go Sturman with me because they're not going to make enough money. I'm not going to make enough money for them to make enough money. And I don't want to pressure myself into fishing 800, miss out on my kids' childhood, and not be able to come in early if they have a game. Or, I mean, in the fall when school starts up, this is my dilemma right now. The 12-year-old can get the 8-year-old up and get them both ready for school and off on the bus and off to school. Do I want to do that? Do I want to miss every morning that my kids go to school? I mean, the payoff is big. It's a bigger check. It's a couple more hours on the water. It's getting to start at 5 instead of 7:30. And that's huge. Nobody wants to start at 7:30. If you can't start at 5, you almost just want to go home, you know.
Why'd you look at me?
I'm looking for agreement, right?
My daycare opens at 7. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
But I mean, these are the choices everybody has to make, and it's different for everyone. Some people are okay with that. You know, 12-year-old that's good enough. He can do that. He can get the kids up and get everybody off to school. And they're doing it now for summer camp. He's doing a good job of it, but I don't know, something about sending them off to school without mama being home makes me feel guilty. So that can happen.
I've decided motherhood is just a long series of feeling guilty for every choice you make about your kids, no matter what you do or when.
Yeah, no, I mean, I left at like 9:30 today. You pick your own hours. And, I mean, they have to get to dance camp, you know, they have to go places, do things, and I was hauling alone in the fog. It was slow. It was slow going, baiting, banding, doing everything yourself. And then some days when we're done, I'll go pick them up at the dock so they don't have to stay all day. So they can just go haul their traps, and then usually I'll drop them off and then go sell, and they get to have more free time. It's their summertime. It's their time to play and play sports and enjoy being a kid. But yeah, it is nice to have the flexibility. I definitely don't make as much as probably a lot of these people, but I chose to raise my daughter and be there for her and fish when I can and fish as hard as I can. And she's almost to that age where now I can probably start fishing harder.
So the thing that I love about events like this and the conversations that we have is that, you know, all of our kids are different ages, we're in different harbors, but we're all part of the same industry and the same fishery. And I always learn a lot, and I feel better after I talk to other women that are in the same position that I am, or women like Heather who have kids that are older, and I know that it is possible to get over the toddler hump and someday be able to truly set your own hours. And then looking back and having littles, because I had littles like Abby does now, so I'm in the team Set Your Own Hours camp. I get out when I can, working around my kids' schedule. I have another job. I have to be in Augusta tomorrow, which I'm upset about because I didn't go today, but things like that. So I appreciate this opportunity and you putting this together. I haven't seen many of you for quite some time, although at the races. So I really want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting the opportunity to have this conversation. Any other questions? All right. Oh, hold on. I see one more.
I just wonder if there are any other women lobster captains, Sturman in
Oh,
the
there.
audience.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if anybody else is here that wasn't on the panel. Hey. Well, now I want to hear your story.
I retired last fall. 11 years on my own in just a little boat, and I didn't go very far, some sound around the house. But I fished with my husband for 22 years as stern man, and I've been associated with the fishing industry since 1964. So I've seen changes in the shedders. They didn't come in July. They didn't come until maybe September. Fall was your big fishing. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Except I do love being on the water, seeing that trap buried. If it has something in it or if it has nothing in it, it's always exciting.
All right, well, I want to take the opportunity again to thank our hosts tonight, St. John Episcopal Church and the Southwest Harbor Public Library, and of course, Ali Farrell. I'm sure we're all going to stick around for a few minutes. If anybody wants to come up and say hi, please read the book. Please talk to Ali about her project. That's what we're here to talk about and promote. Thank you for sharing our stories. Thank you for the opportunity. And everybody have a fantastic summer, and I hope that you are able to stay out of traffic.